How many of you in years past have begun the Advent season with the best of intentions? This year, Advent and Christmas will not get away from me. This year, I'm going to focus. I'm going to embrace all that is to be embraced. I'm going to shut out all that would steal my focus. And yet Advent comes and goes, and somehow it got away from you again. Have you ever had that experience? How many of you, having had that experience, redoubled your efforts the very following year and recommitted? This year, Advent and Christmas will not get away from me, only for Advent and Christmas to get away from us again. This morning, we have another opportunity. We have an opportunity to welcome the transcendent one, the one that is both immanent here in our midst, and the one who is infinite, the one who transcends time and space. What is it that we are hoping for this Advent? What is it that we are expecting? Do we expect God to do what God has done and will do again? Do we expect that God can show up in ways that transcend our categories? Do we really believe in miracles? Do we really believe that God can make a way out of no way? There are people within the sound of my voice. There are people all over the world that are hoping that God is God. There are people who are hoping for a miracle. My hope for us as we journey together over the next 4 weeks and beyond, should we be so fortunate, is that we will encounter God in a way that will utterly change the way we see ourselves. That we will encounter God perhaps anew in a way that will cause us to perceive of God in ways we've never perceived God before. That we will see and perceive those who are closest to us, our loved ones, in ways that God sees our loved ones. That we will see the church. That we will see God's world as God sees the church and the world. In order to do that, we're going to have to suspend our need for control. In order to do that, we're going to have to suspend our expectations. For some of us, we're reluctant to do that because we don't like surprises. For some of us, we've experienced surprises that were unwelcome. For some of us, we've experienced circumstances and events that were beyond our control. And they were circumstances and events that we never would have planned ourselves. So this morning, I encourage you. I invite you to pray for the courage to welcome a new experience, to be surprised, to welcome God to surprise all of us in the ways that only God can surprise us. That's at least in part what this Advent journey is all about. It may come as a surprise to some of you that my message was completed earlier than I expected this week. I had planned it out. I like to have some sense of what to expect on a Sunday morning, and yet this is a season of mystery. This is a mystical journey. That's our Advent theme this year. And having made plans, I was surprised by a text that came at 12:06 a.m. this past Friday. Technically, you would say morning. Mr. Kynes, could I ask you something? It's been on my mind lately. This is a text from a teenager, a young man named Jahim, who a couple of years ago suffered the unthinkable. His brother was diagnosed with cancer, and within that same year, we attended his memorial service. And I realized when Jahim sent me this text at 12:06 a.m., something really was on his heart and mind. I responded, of course, you can always ask me anything that's on your mind. And in the vernacular of a teenager, he says, IK, the letter IK, which means I know. When I say I talk to God, we do that every day, but I just wonder, because I hear people, saying that they ask God questions for help in their daily life. I wonder what it's like when he's talking to you. Those are excellent questions, Jahim. I'll give you a more adequate response tomorrow. I'm not in a place where I can right now. I was at a football game Friday evening. All right, yes, do. Yes, sir, thank you. Jahim, I'm going to write something and send it to you. Also, we can talk about it over the phone anytime. Your question really is one of the most important questions there is, and I cannot reply adequately in a text. Do you have an email address, or can I send it by mail if you'll give me your home address, whichever you prefer? Yes, sir. He gives me his email address. That's my email. Thank you, sir. Great, I'll send it to you tomorrow afternoon. Again, he says, all right, thank you, sir. Does God still speak to us? For Jahim, the stakes are high. For us, the stakes are high, aren't they? How do we know that God is speaking to us? How do we know, with all of the authorities that are making a claim for our attention, that what we're hearing is consistent with the word and the words of God? I'll share with you what I would hope to share with Jahim, rooted in the text that we read this morning. Authority will rest on his shoulders. His authority will grow, and there will be endless peace. If we want to know what God says to us, look at the one who was with God in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. He came to that which was his own. He created the world. Look to that one to understand the ways in which God speaks. Jesus is the one who said, I know it's been said, but I say. Think of that. Jesus is the one who said, I know it's been said, but I say. Remember, authority will rest on his shoulders. Jesus had the authority to say, I know it's been said, but I say. I know it's been said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who despitefully use you. Grow in your perfection of love. The word and words of God are always, always, always words of love. God's words are life-giving and life-creating. God does not speak in ways that are life-diminishing. God's words have the power to give life. That word was embodied some 2,000 years ago. That creative word, that word of love, for all of us who receive that word, who believe in the name that means God saves. That's what Jesus means. The name Jesus means God saves. For everyone who receives, for everyone who believes that God's love saves. The writer of 1 John tells us that those who do not know love do not know God, for God is love. God is love. Only love can save us. How many of us genuinely believe that? That only love can save us. Authority will rest on his shoulders. His authority will grow, and there will be endless peace. How many of you know that there will not be endless peace until love becomes the authority? How many of you know that until we believe, until we receive, that love is the most powerful force in the universe? We'll have to wait for endless peace. We can trust that God is speaking to us when every person is affirmed as a child of God. Now, for our critical thinkers this morning, I can anticipate and I deeply appreciate critical thinking. In fact, to Jaheim and to you, I would say, ask your questions. Did we not just hear that for those who received him, those who believe him, he gave the power to become children of God? And now, Jacob, you're saying we are children of God. Well, that is what we are. We have this human condition, but we are created in the image of God. And something I pray you'll hear me say often is that Jesus was who God is, and we are called to be. We are children of God, created in God's image. Jesus is that light that shines and illuminates our true nature. When we believe that Jesus reveals our true nature, we are empowered to become who we truly are. How many of you look at the world in which we live and sometimes find it hard to find hope? It appears as though it's increasingly difficult, doesn't it? So where should we look for hope? I invite you to look to your left and to your right. We're waiting for someone or something out there to come and rescue and deliver us. But the rescuer came 2,000 years ago. Arrived, that's what Advent means. Has been arriving and will arrive in you and in me when we believe. When we genuinely believe that God is love. When we pause to focus on the peace derived from love, when following the way of love, we become the children of God that we were created to be. And that we, like Jesus, when he came near, embody the hope born of love. My prayer for us this first Sunday in Advent is that we will be intentional about listening to what God would say to us. When God says that we are children of God, we'll believe it. When God says love is the only path to peace, when God says that you and I, God within and among us, more fully embodying that which Jesus embodied, that we will believe that we are the ones we've been waiting for. That's my prayer for me. That's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for all of God's children. And let the church say, Amen.